Many are still grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective Podcast, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating and not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to Adopt Perspective. I'm your host and president of Jigsaw Queensland, Jo Sparrow. Today's guest is someone whose story spans generations, heartbreak, resilience, and a kind of spiritual intuition that stops you in your tracks. Tammy Richie was born in 1972 in Toowoomba and adopted into a family in Boonah. And she now lives on the Gold Coast, is a mum and a veteran of the Australian Army. Oh, military, I should say, not Army.
Air Force.
Air Force, there you go. You know, it's a small thing, isn't it, Tammy?
Slightly, yes.
Don't come after me, military people. Tammy's story is a powerful one, and it begins with a tragic loss that led to her adoption and follows her journey through discovering she'd lost her twin at birth, abuse, discovery, reunion, and the ongoing impact of adoption in her own family. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us and being here today and your willingness to share so much of yourself with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for organising the interview. It's incredible space. I can already feel the tears welling, but it's really incredible for the healing journey.
Well, hopefully we can make it as calm for you as we possibly can. So,
yes.
So I'd love to begin by hearing a little bit about your early life and what it was like for you growing up as an adopted person and what moments or memories stand out for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I actually didn't know that I was part of a twin at all during my childhood, early childhood. I remember always being told that, by my dad, he was like my mum and my dad, that I was special, that I was adopted. But I honestly don't think that they knew, but something inside me knew, there was something that could tell that there was another guiding force around protecting me. So I spent 6 months in the hospital, not that you'd remember that as a baby, but when I was adopted, my dad, I was very close to him, my adopted dad, and he did share with me towards the end of his passing a couple of things that, made a lot of sense to me, I suppose. So they were, went to go and pick me up from Toowoomba, and my adopted mum back then, she had a lot of hurt that she hadn't healed herself. And it's really important, as we know, that when we go through triggers and traumas that we do focus on that. And so she didn't get that opportunity. So she had a lot of anger towards women for whatever reason, I don't know. And that was alerted the very first time that they met me. So when they went to go and collect me, she was holding on to my brother, who's about 16 months older than me. And then apparently the nurses had said, "Hey, here's your baby girl. Do you want to, give her a cuddle, give her a nurse?" And she just said, no, sorry, I've got my son. And my dad said he felt like, oh my goodness, if I don't do something now, they're not gonna, they're not gonna allow us to have her. So he swept down and picked me up, and I had that instant connection with him. The feeling of feeling so safe and supported, and just a beautiful, beautiful man. And he did, I'm sure it was beyond him, being a mum and a dad, but he was definitely that for me. So there was an early memory that I remember going up for a cuddle with my mum and, raising my hands and, because I love cuddles, and I got flung across the room by her. And so I learnt early on, not to, not to seek that, even though I was seeking love, but I got it from my dad, which was a blessing as well. Moving on, like nowadays, I look back and I can see how all of those things, that stories, have really made me the person that I am, because I have, serving in the military, in the Air Force as an aircraft engineer, I literally did break my back and my neck and had to learn how to walk again. I've had a lot of autoimmune diseases from a lot of the chemical exposures from then as well. But one thing that is apparent to me is the pain. I don't actually feel the pain, which is really quite absurd. And the recent retreat that I did, the Buddhist Vipassana silence retreat, it made sense to me now that during my early childhood, I was physically abused, mentally abused, emotionally abused by my mum. And I built up a resilience at that young age. And I'm sure it was my twin that was, in protecting me, but I just didn't feel the pain. So initially, of course, I did. But then I thought, well, what's the point of resisting? And so that actually put up this pain barrier, I suppose, which has come to, really be a really positive thing throughout my life. And I see it now. So the earliest memory of my mum pushing me across the room, like flying me across the room, is not such a great memory, but I've been able to forgive her, you know, because of obviously she didn't have the ability to heal herself. And before she passed away, because she did pass away maybe 10 years ago, I was able to, do a lot of forgiveness for her as well, because there's a lot of great attributes that I have because of the childhood that I had.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry that was your experience, Tammy. Let me say that first. Whew. um, how and when did you first learn that you were adopted?
So from whenever I could remember, my beautiful dad would, lean over and tell me how special I was. I didn't even know what it was, but I knew I was different. I was different to the rest of the family. I had different attributes, and that again was a blessing because I was always optimistic no matter what was going on, and I wasn't going into the drama or the chaos. So I could really stand out and see. And so, not feeling included also in the family, in the extended family. I remember, having reunions and things like that and not feeling included, So, my granddad would talk about his memory of, different people in the families, and, he would just call my brother and I, because he was also adopted as well, that we're not part of the family. So it's sort of felt that way in any case early on. I had a really good friend that I would confide in, and she was like a really good savior to me as well. I'm really grateful that she's still in my life now. And not that she spoke up to my mum, but she was there to sort of protect me as much as I could, as she could as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Was adoption ever, I know this would be quite difficult with your mum by the sounds of it, but was it
Mm.
something that was spoken about freely in your adoptive family?
Yeah, and so my mum's perspective of why I was adopted wasn't very pleasant. Yeah, it wasn't great at all. She spoke really low of my birth mum. I, I'm not sure what details she had, but yeah, everything that she'd sort of said to me wasn't nice about her, and there was no compliments on, how I looked. It was always that it was just all negative comments, just, that no one wanted me, my own mum didn't want me, which is really hurtful because I think that, I didn't know that, like, I look at it now and I think no one actually came and watched, no one came and observed, no one came and checked in to see how the family life was. They
Mm.
just accepted that she's pretending to be Christian and it's okay. So I feel kind of let down by the system, if that makes sense. That, all of this was going on. My school friend knew it was going on. I had broken bones. I had like chunks of hair removed from my head. And there was one teacher that actually questioned me about that. Only one. And, and I didn't want to cause a big scene, and so I just covered it up to protect my mum as well, because I really had no idea, like, where would I go from there? You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah. I think that might be one of the things that I would like to see change the most about adoption if it continues on in the modern world, is that there is no oversight. Like it takes kids out of the child safety system and financially out of that system as well, and puts them with an adoptive family, and then the oversight stops. Um,
yeah.
and and it needs to stay on because it's no guarantee that there's going to be a happy ending. So um,
Yeah, as I said, like a lot of the things and the resilience and the strengths that I've had to build up, oversee over my life now, and I'm optimistic, but I oversee it as gifts, even though I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to open the door and go through it all again. But it's definitely led to give me incredible attributes to be able to get through so many huge, tragedies or traumas that I've faced in my life as well. Um, Another thing I wanted to mention also, I mentioned that I'd spent quite a lot of time in the hospital, like 6 months. And, a lot of the studies, like Dr. Joe Dispenza and a lot of different experts, mentioned that children just cannot survive without some kind of support, some kind of love. And so I often wondered about that. And I thought, wow, so, I'm separated from my twin, separated from everyone that I knew, and I'm in the hospital. And all I was told is that the nurses just didn't have time to care for me. They had their own workload. So obviously they were trying. And I often wondered. And so when I first met my birth mum, which was when our eldest daughter's 26, so when she was a baby, there was a desire to meet her then. And the first person she took me to meet, and I really just wish I would have understood the reasoning behind it at the time. But she just said, "Come on, we've got to go to Toowoomba." So I'd met her. It was a beautiful experience. And she said, "I need to introduce you to this beautiful lady. Her name is Cookie." And so I went and I visited Cookie with her, and I was wondering who is Cookie? Who is this woman? And I didn't know until later, and that was when she passed away, that she was the woman that would go in, somehow must have snuck into the ward or selflessly would go to give me cuddles every day.
yeah, I'm glad you had Cookie there.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I see the importance of it now. I'm like, wow. And I just wish that I would have been able to absorb it all. Like, it was just a lot at the time, meeting my birth mum and shooting off to Toowoomba to this, and to meet this lady. And yeah, I think Cookie was a really good support for her as well when she was, yeah, when she made the, well, when she was taken away and had to, go and live in Toowoomba, an hour away from where she was from.
So you've jumped ahead of me a little bit. So I
Oh,
want to
sorry.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything there. And I had been going to ask you whether you always had a sense of curiosity about your origins, or if there was something specific that prompted you to begin that search for your mum. Um,
Mm.
and you said it was something about your daughter. Like, what was it?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things actually. So when I was 21, or maybe a little bit before, I was planning an overseas trip, and so I needed to get a passport. And so I needed the official documents and not the birth extract. By that time, I was in the Air Force, and I spoke to my dad and said, "Oh, I need to get this document." And so he arranged to get the document. And when he received the document, he rang me and he said, "Tam, you're never going to believe this. And honestly, we didn't know, but it says on my birth certificate my original name, of course, and also that I was firstborn of twins."
Wow.
So, I get this, and then all of the guys that I work with, they're all engineers, and they're all like, "What? There's another one of you." And so they sparked the interest to say, "Well, can the world cope with that?" And they were like, "We want to meet her. Let's try and find her." And so that was the original thing that, I had my friend that I grew up with, who was my sidekick. She was always there for me, and she said, "I know that you're busy, but," and she would go to the electoral office, and go through all the documents, to try and locate my mum or someone in the family to see what was going on, because we just knew we had no idea with the twin, but it will locate my mum. And so no matter what we did, my husband was also on it. We were looking at phone books, just doing everything. And when our daughter came along, obviously, just with health, it's, and you don't have any health history whatsoever, that also led to the curiosity as well. So whatever we were doing to try and find information, we were just getting, hit up against a brick wall. Sorry, my dogs are barking.
Can't
Yeah. And so what actually happened is my husband was working, he was also an engineer in the Air Force as well. And the team that he was working with, each one of the guys, their wives, coincidentally, were also adopted. And so they were in all different states. So they'd already found their families as well. And so he was like, "What? How do you do this?" And so that was when we kind of went to, I think it was a company called Family Link. We were living in Sydney at the time. And it happened within a couple of days that we actually got to be connected to her. And it was, it was a service probably similar to Jigsaw, but it was in Sydney. Yeah. And so that's how, that's when we first attempted to try and find her and located her. And it wasn't long after that we actually physically met.
What can you tell us about that meeting?
Yeah, for sure. It's quite interesting because we were living in Sydney. She was living in North Brisbane, or yeah, somewhere in Brisbane at the time. And my husband said, "Oh my goodness, we just need to meet her." Like, because they were, doing a bit of a mentor session with us to say, we don't recommend that you meet straight away. Perhaps you have some meetings first. And my husband was like, "What? No way. Let's go meet her. Let's see if she's open." And then she, sent photos through and stuff like that of what she looked like. And he could see just even in some of the photos, the attributes and, even like how she cleaned a house kind of thing. He's like, "Wow, so bizarre." So we organized to fly to Brisbane and then meet her at the Sunshine Coast. And it was all organized on a time. And so we'd been at the beach the day before when we were meant to meet, and we were surfing and swimming and having a great time. And I knew my body was telling me that it was going to be soon that I'm meeting her. So I was getting quite anxious. And then my husband's phone rang and he answered. And I thought it was just one of his friends that wanted to catch up. And he said, "Sure, no worries. We'll be there in 10 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, and who was this?" We'd just gotten off the beach, surfing, hair everywhere and stuff. And he said, "Oh, I've just gotten off the phone to your mum. She wants to meet now rather than tomorrow." And I'm like, "What?" Can't believe it. So it was a little bit unprepared, which was really quite good because it didn't allow the time, for the anxiety to kick in really. And I was quite curious as to meeting her, and she was just really welcoming and really lovely. And yeah, and so we did have time, and she did explain some things, but I got to meet her and her husband. Coincidentally, she married her husband that she was still with until they both passed away. She married him 12 months to the day after I was born. So it was just a bit of a shame that it was a little bit later than, yeah.
And what did she tell you about the circumstances of your conception?
So that went on for a little while because she said that it's a very, very complicated case and there's a lot of, there's other people involved. So my half sister, she was, I think, 8 years of age. And so she was born, and my mum was married to this beautiful man prior to me coming along. And she was happy. He was just the man of her dreams. So during her pregnancy with my older sister, the one that was 8 years of age, he got very sick, and so the doctors advised him not to tell her because she was pregnant and it could affect the baby. So he didn't tell her. He had heart complications. And anyway, then he had to have surgery, which was major surgery. And again, they advised, don't tell your wife because everything will be fine. She's pregnant. She's heavily pregnant at that stage. So he chose not to tell her, and he didn't make it. He passed away on the operating table. And so she was then left as a widow. 2 weeks, he passed away actually on my birthday. So she was born on the 14th of February. She was only 2 weeks of age when he passed away. And then my mum found herself in a situation where there isn't any support from the government at that time. She became a widow straight away. So she had to go into survival mode. All of that affected her quite significantly with her nervous system and everything, because she then became, having to be resourceful and earn income whilst she's looking after this new baby. So she put all of her energy into raising this child. She didn't do anything else. And then by the time my sister was around about the age of 8 years of age, that's when she decided to start dating again. So she started dating, and she dated my husband, my dad, sorry. And it was when she fell pregnant that her brother said, "Oh my goodness, you know that he's married." So she wasn't aware he was married even. And so that just really destroyed her, really, because she was a Christian lady as well. So yeah, so it was like, well, how can I bring this child into the world? I'm not sure from that point the decision was made that she had to go away to Toowoomba. So she lived in Brisbane. And at that point, my half sister wasn't allowed to go with her. So my half sister went to live with one of her sisters. And she made the decision not to tell her anything, that mummy's just gone away. Didn't tell her where she was going, what was going on. And she went away for 12 months. Yeah, so it's been very complicated, meeting the extended family. There's a lot of hurt there, from my half sister's point of view. So I did meet her when we initially did meet. She was the first person I met before I met my birth mum, and she was curious to meet me because I was the person that took her away from her mum. Yeah. So she's got her own traumas, and apparently my mum went back after 12 months and still didn't tell her where she had been. And it wasn't until she chose, when my sister was 14 years of age, that she told her that she went away and that she delivered 2 babies. So it wasn't the most ideal time, she was a bit of a wayward child because of, the separation, and not, feeling isolated and not loved because of the decision that my mum had. And my mum went into just loving, over the top caring for her after that. She was always trying to make it up to her. So I remember when I first met my mum, and I was working full time. We had our baby, and I was studying and everything as well. And I remember her always saying, "Oh, poor Sandy," who's my sister, who she's so busy. She's working as a teacher. And then, so my mum lived not far from her, and she would do all the cleaning and, do all the cooking and all the tasks that a mum would do, because she just felt guilty, and I can understand that. So there was all that guilt. And as I said, the first meeting that I had with her, it went well, but then after that, she tried to sabotage any kind of communication or relationship that we'd ever had, including, trying to destroy my husband's reputation. My husband is just the most beautiful man. And, she was trying to taint his persona to my mum. My mum was actually believing her until I questioned her. And, at that point, when I did question her, and I'm like, I don't think, like, Matt's not capable of doing these things that you're saying, that she's been saying to you. And then she just straight away reacted and said, "Well, who do you think, are you trying to blame my daughter? Are you trying to say my daughter's a liar?" And I went, "Well, who am I?" So at that point, I decided I needed to separate from that whole kind of chaos. And I thought, if my mum wanted to know me, get to know me, let's just get to know each other rather than not having, the hurt half sister involved. And so she eventually did come back, because I just thought it was just hurting me more than anything. Yeah.
That's a lot, Tammy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a little bit more because my mum, I was led to her. She passed away maybe a couple of years ago now. And I, yeah, as I said, I've got my twin. She's around and she guides me. That's another blessing. But I was led to my birth mum's bedside, but I didn't see that she was palliative. I just, because, we've got a daughter, one of our daughters is not well. So I was, spent all this time with her for, 12 months in the hospital, pretty well on and off. And I had time to go and visit my birth mum. And, I felt led to go to see her. And it was during the time they were still having the COVID testing and everything. So I remember my son coming with me and he's like, "Oh, Mum, I don't want to go in there and get tested." And so when he decided to come with me, but when we went in there, it was like we were two little teenagers because we'd gotten away without having to get the test. But didn't even think it was because she was palliative. I was just like, I was just late. I've got to go see her. We're driving right past. I'll go see her. And I saw her and she opened her eyes and she looked up at me and she said my name. And then she smiled and then she closed her eyes. And as I said, I didn't notice anything else, but because she closed her eyes, it was later in the day. I thought I'd just spend 10 minutes and then I'll just leave her alone. And it was, yeah, a couple of weeks after that, I rang to check in on her, but she'd already passed. And so
Yeah.
I wasn't told.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit of a trickier one because I feel for my half sister. And yeah, as you know, with adoption comes a lot of trauma. And I can't control, how my half sister was. I can only control how I am. And there's been a lot of blessings that have come because I wasn't told, but I was led to, and there's been a lot of miracles that have happened. My mum shows me she's around through nature. Yeah, so, and I honor her because must have been difficult for her to actually make the decision to keep me, to take herself away from everything she knew and to put herself into that situation where the home was, it wasn't comfortable as we know, and she still did that. So that's just a gift. I feel grateful.
I mean, it just reminds me of like the incredible complexity of adoption and the reunions and the situations we find ourselves in as we try and piece things back together. And really you can't piece things back together. You have to have no expectations and be open to what comes. But
Yeah.
it's not just our mothers that we're connecting with. There's family on that side, there's hurts, there's secrecy, there's all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to honor that. Thank you for sharing that because that's a lot.
It is, and it's the jigsaw, like the name. It totally is because, as you were saying, it's like one of those hush hush secretive kind of things. But we know now, we know we're so much more evolved and we understand the importance of the mum with the child and feeling loved, and just those kinds of simple things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you find, one of the things that I found confronting when I found my mother was I didn't find any similarities. Certainly
Mm,
not in the first instance in looks or anything. And I was desperate to find someone that looked like me, or I found parts of
mm,
myself in. And while what I found was lovely, it was a little disappointing to not find that. But it's something I found later on my paternal side. So did you find any similarities in personality, appearance, or interests when you connected?
More so, just exactly like what you had said, it was more to do with the paternal side of what, the vision that she painted of my dad, the curiosity, the spirituality, the everything that, is me. And so then I wanted to find my dad, and yeah, and so I did search for my dad and found him, but it was just 2 weeks too late. Yeah, I have found my a birth sister, I mean a half sister to my dad, since that time during COVID, and we're so close. I'm just so grateful, and she's been able to share so much about, photos, and I'm very similar to him, and his different attributes. So yeah, it was a little bit not disappointing, but one of my daughters has got blonde sort of golden hair, and that's what my mum had as well. So there was similarities with my children in that way.
How was your adoptive family how did they respond when you went searching? Were they supportive, or were they involved at all at that point?
So so my dad would always say that, that I was always wanted, and he'd try to really edify my birth family. Um, but my mum, yeah, she was just too hurt, so she would just, foil any chance. So in the end, I can't remember how old I was, but I joined Jigsaw. Um, and and my mum found out about it, and she just refused to talk to me for 6 months. She just said, if you're trying to find any roots of, anything whatsoever. And so I just went, you know what? I don't need to tell her. So I kind of did it sneakily behind her back because I had the curiosity. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
I knew that there had to be something different, but I think she was just embarrassed because of the way she was a mum towards me. But it was her stuff, My mum, then both mums met because I thought, when you have children, you can't have two christenings or two birth, it's just a bit crazy. So one of the christenings that we had with one of our daughters, I invited them both, and I was a bit cautious, but it went well. And my beautiful mum, my birth mum, I didn't tell her about all the hurtful things or anything like that, but she's a beautiful lady with presence, whereas my adopted mum, really wasn't. Yeah, so, they met. It was good that they did meet, and I could really show my adopted mum, that my mum was actually completely opposite to what the picture that she painted of how she was. Yeah.
Um, this is a bit of a question without notice, Tammy, but I have never really shared on my maternal side some of the more challenging parts of my own adoption story because I kind of felt like maybe it wouldn't have been kind to share that with her, like that maybe it's better for her to think that it was all kind of roses. And and so I think in some ways it gets in the way of us knowing each other fully when I haven't shared like some of the challenges. But I have been able to share some of those with my paternal, like with my father, which has made that oddly like a more open relationship. I'm wondering, did you share about your story of adoption with your mother?
Yeah. Yeah. And she did need a lot of support after that, because she was told that, I was going to a nice home, a Christian home. Yeah, so, and she believed that, so it was quite hurtful for her.
Yeah, thank you.
She did meet my dad though. She just, they hit it off. I'm sure they're together high-fiving each other upstairs right now, but yeah.
Yeah. So you were able to connect with your father's side. You
Yeah.
mentioned a little bit, but can you tell us any more about what that has been like for you?
Amazing. Yeah, so I have a really good friend, and she's also adopted. However, it was more, she was with her mum, and then her mum, she went into care when she was only a few years old, and then they were adopted out from there. So her family found her on a TV show called Find My Family. Do you remember that TV show? Yeah. So she was sharing that video of the journey on her social media during COVID. And I was like, wow, I've never seen this before. And then it was her family that found her. And I'm like, wow, I wonder if my family could find, I wonder if there's a TV show, if we can do the TV show. And the TV show didn't exist, but the Facebook group did. So there was this beautiful lady. I was just sharing this story with someone, I think yesterday, because there was this beautiful lady. I've never met her before in my life. And she just went above and beyond because I put a post on the particular group asking if they knew my dad and then his wife, because I had the details of her. And it wasn't my intention to go in and disrupt the family, particularly if they were still together, because they were married still when I came into the world. And yeah, so I put it in there, and this lady just, she just went with it. She just became this woman on a mission to go, I'm really going to find your family. And so she found my half sister. It happened really quickly on the social media. And next minute, so my half sister was connected, but she didn't know who I was. So then we started, and I really wasn't sure how much she knew. Anyway, we started communicating on a Facebook post on a personal message thing. And it got really difficult because I was like, why don't we just talk? And and then I was pretty aware at that time that she didn't know who I was. So she was kept on asking me, so how do you know my mum and dad? Kind of thing. She kept on bringing it up. And I was like thinking, oh my goodness, I'll dip my toe in. I don't know if I'm ready for this,
Get a bit
Yeah, but it was pretty amazing because she kept on asking and persistent. And I was thinking, no, I'm developing rapport, building a relationship. And then towards the end, I just said to her, I asked her, so when's your birthday? And she shared her birthday. Now, her birthday was the August. I was born her birthday was the August the year before I was born. So I was born in the February. And I was like, oh, Jesus, is getting even harder because, her mum must have been pregnant when he'd had the affair, kind of thing, pregnant with her. And so I just thought it's just never going to happen. And in the end, she shared a lot about her mum and dad. There wasn't happiness there at all. They stayed together because it was Catholic, and yeah, so she knew that her dad had, was away working and blah, blah, blah. Not that she but approved of it. But she alluded that her mum and dad just weren't happy. They didn't have a very happy childhood and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so it kind of got to that point where I just thought, you know what? I'm up for rejection. I've already had the rejection. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I then said to her, look, and this was over a period of time, maybe a couple of months. And I said to her, I have reason to believe that we have the same dad. And then the phone kind of went silent.
Yeah.
And then she came back. Eventually, she said, oh my goodness, I knew you were out there. I knew. So she had this different reaction, and she'd actually been to the UK thinking, her mum and dad came from the UK, and she went looking for a sister that she knew was missing, like all these years ago. And so it was such a beautiful reaction, how she reacted. And we met not long after that. And we just had this instant connection. She looks up to me, even though she's a bit older, but she's always, asking for advice, and just like a sister would do, and I feel so grateful.
Yeah. Sounds like there's definitely been some blessings. And I was going to ask you, like, if you're summarizing it all up, what has it meant to you to reconnect with your biological family, and how has that shaped your understanding of yourself?
So, as I said, I had the relationship with my birth mum, and that was amazing. However, it was taken away just through the hurt. So that was really hurtful. But as I said, she's around guiding me. I never got to meet my birth dad, but my sister has just been, she's the only one that's my dad's daughter. Yeah, it's just been a blessing to be connected to her. I don't know too much else about the whole situation and my other half sister, but I've got her. She did mention too, we've got another brother and sister like she does, and one of them actually lives here on the Gold Coast. And it's interesting that I didn't go to her first. I went to this other one first, which was a blessing because apparently the one here on the Gold Coast wouldn't have been as accepting. And she did share the news because we spent time together, and she was so excited. She shared the news with her brother who lives in China and he's quite affluent, I believe. And she shared, "Oh my goodness, I've just spent the weekend with our, half sister," and he's just like, "What does she want?"
Oh,
kind of thing, who is she? What does she want? And it put the seed of doubt in her as to what was my motive, as to, you know, and then even who am I and how do we know that it's that we've got the same dad, and all of those kinds of things. I did mention to her about ancestry, DNA, and she's welcome to get the test, blah blah blah. And it was around that time also that I was asking the hospital for information about my twin, because they just would tell me, they just said, look, the twin just was disposed of. Basically, she was born and then disposed of, and that's what they did back then, which was really hurtful. But they were able to give me some more information, some more legal documents, and with her details on it and my details, and clarity. And it also had my dad's details as the father. So it kind of happened at that same time when she was questioning, and I was like, well, just do the DNA test. And then it was like, boom, here it is. It just came in like it was just magical. It came in that day. And I was like, oh, here you go. We are sisters. And so she was pretty excited about that, because any doubt that she had, and she didn't even, and it didn't enter her mind. She wasn't looking at what was wrong. She was looking at what was right, because she knew, that she was searching for me in another country. And she just kind of had that feeling that, that I existed. And even though it was complicated, again, like just with the, her mum being pregnant at the same time, similar. But we've just let that slide and just, really gotten to know each other.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah.
So you're a mother yourself,
Yeah.
and this is where I get tripped up when somebody asks me about this. But if you're comfortable reflecting, how has your adoption experience shaped the way you approach parenting and your closest relationships?
Yeah. Because I didn't get the love from my mum, I wanted to be different. Like from my adopted mum, I wanted to be different. And probably I look back now and I think maybe I was a bit too controlling. Maybe I wanted to, like Mel Robbins, she's amazing, and let them theory, her simple reminders. Um, because we have children, and two of our daughters have not been well. That stems from trauma, emotional, all the stuff. So I'm consistently working on myself, healing myself, so our children can benefit. And I can see that, being the mum, the people pleaser mum, I suppose, wanting to do everything. Like I wouldn't even go to the toilet without taking the bassinet with me. I wanted that safety for her. I really didn't understand. Now I understand, because I was seeking safety myself, which I never had. So it's probably over the top, you know, overly protective, safe, and that's great. It's beautiful for them to feel that way. However, I do also believe that sometimes you can rob them of their joy and their journey. So I've kind of learnt, our eldest is 26 now, and I've learnt to let go, and let her have decisions on her health. And by doing that, even though it's frustrating, she's waking up herself. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Is like, it was just probably, I didn't have that. Like, and I do think I have thought about this actually, and I thought, how would it have been if it was, because it's been 14 years with our daughter that she's been unwell. She's a doctor almost herself, but she's been in hospital for long stays. She's had about 60 operations, many multiple treatments, many major surgeries, life-saving. It's been extreme. And I think, what would have happened if it was me that, how would that have been? Because I didn't have that mum figure apart from my dad, which I don't think he would have been. I'm sure he would have been capable, but I don't know, so I kind of think, our children choose us for reasons. I've learned so much by being their mum, I'm so grateful. And I just, the blessing is to be able to see that, to be able to go, wow, I can help her, but it's not me going through that at all. And yeah, I often think, we did speak about it earlier, about a rubber band being in the hospital because I'd spent so long in there, and it actually feels like home to me, weirdly enough. I don't like going there now, obviously, with our daughter's health and everything, but it feels like I'm like, my goodness, questioning why am I, why all this in the hospital? Why all this chaos?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I have talked to a few adopted people, particularly ones who spent longer in care before they were adopted. And they've said that they feel quite comfortable in hospitals and that they like them. It feels homey, something about the smell. Whereas I've always been the opposite. I loathe going into hospitals, and maternity hospitals in particular. I have a very strong reaction. I do not want to be in there. But yeah, it seems like we're kind of most of us fall on one side or the other, not too much in the middle of neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, when you say that, it's taken a lot of work and a lot of healing for me to actually even want to be in my own home. I feel that, and I couldn't understand why, like, I've got this wonderful husband who provides the safety for me that I was seeking. I mean, he offers a lot more than that, honestly, but just feeling safe for me was really important because I had some traumatic experiences during my time in the military as well, where I wasn't safe. So that was a really important thing for me. But yeah, I felt like it feels safer at the hospital sorry, than even being in my own home. Whereas I've now learned to love my home. I live in a beautiful property, beautiful place, and so I've had to learn to actually appreciate that rather than running from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. I think it takes a long time for us to set up our nest when we're adopted sometimes because our identity is so complex for us to figure that out. You can see behind me all of the stuff I've collected around me, and it's only really when I kind of built this room and started populating it with things that meant a lot to me, it was like I started to watch my identity frame up around me, which has been, that's my life struggle, I think, is figuring out who I was and what I liked. It's
Yes.
important to me, and it's kind of, they're just things, but they're things that mean something important to me. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, sorry, I'm sorry about the dogs, but
Can't hear
um,
them.
the mask, like putting the mask up because you're putting the mask up to protect yourself and you're actually not getting to know the real person you are because of that. So it's really awesome that you're consciously doing that to be able to, feel the things that you like and be okay with that. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work around that about removing the masks and seeing that I'm okay and not comparing or judging from, haven't comparing or allowing others to judge. It's just like happy being in your own skin, and that takes a long while. Yeah.
Look, Tammy, thank you so much for being with us today, sharing your story with such honesty and just the way you've shared it, and getting to know you over the few phone calls and stuff that we've had in the lead up to this. I
Yeah.
know your story is going to stay with people for a long time, and a lot of them will resonate with it. It's been a real privilege to hear it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for doing what you're doing as well, because our stories do matter. Those of us that have been adopted and been through different things, we're beautiful people. And if we can put the meaning to that, to be more optimistic and see it as a strength, then we're just going to go from strength to strength in our lives. Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. And remember that every adoption experience is different. And just like Tammy said, every story matters. And if you're looking for support, information, or just a place to be heard, then Jigsaw Queensland is here for you. And you can support this podcast by leaving a review, sharing an episode, or getting in touch, because we really love to hear from you. And if you'd like to share your own story on Adopt Perspective, then you can fill out the prospective guest form that you'll find on our website. And I'm Jo Sparrow. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 210313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.